Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
The war room fell silent as the holographic display flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of the Galactic Council's most decorated military commanders. Admiral Thexicor of the Vortian Empire leaned forward, his four eyes narrowing as he studied the tactical readout, hovering before them. After 300 cycles of peace, after countless diplomatic channels had been exhausted, after every warning had been ignored, the decision was finally made. Earth would be breached. "They've had long enough," Thexicor's translator hummed, converting his clicking mandibles into the common tongue. 70 of their years since first contact, and still they refuse to open their borders. Still they hide behind their primitive defense grid, like frightened younglings. "The Council has voted. We will show these humans that the galaxy does not tolerate such isolation." Around the circular chamber, representatives from 47 species nodded in agreement. The humans had become an anomaly, a statistical impossibility that defied every precedent in recorded galactic history. When the first Vortian scout ships had detected their radio signals emanating from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star, it had seemed like a routine first contact scenario. A new species barely into their atomic age, ripe for integration into the galactic community, but the humans had surprised them. Instead of accepting the Council's generous offer of membership, instead of opening their world to trade and cultural exchange, they had politely declined. More shocking still, when the Council had insisted, as they always did with promising new species, the humans had done the unthinkable. They had said no again. And then they had begun building. Within 20 years of first contact, Earth had surrounded itself with a defensive network that made even the oldest Council members uncomfortable. Thousands of automated platforms, energy weapons of frightening efficiency, kinetic barriers that could withstand a sustained bombardment from a full battle fleet. The humans had studied every piece of technology the Council had inadvertently revealed during those first meetings, reverse-engineered it, improved upon it, and deployed it around their homeworld like a fortress wall around a castle. Impressive for primitives, Council member Zathria had admitted during the early debates, but ultimately futile. They lack the resources, the infrastructure, the collective knowledge of 47 spacefaring civilizations. Give them time. They'll open their borders eventually. But time had done nothing to weaken humanity's resolve. If anything, it had strengthened it. Now, as Admiral Thexicor studied the deployment orders, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military service. Not fear, never fear. The Vortian were incapable of such weakness, but perhaps unease. The humans had been quiet for the past 5 years. Too quiet. Their communications had become sporadic. Their diplomatic channels had gone cold, and their defense network had stopped expanding. They're probably exhausted, General Crix of the Mantarian hegemony had suggested. Maintaining such a defense grid must strain their economy to the breaking point. They're waiting for us to lose interest. Thexicor wasn't so sure. In his experience, when an enemy went quiet, they were either surrendering or preparing something unexpected. And nothing about humanity's behavior suggested surrender. "The fleet will depart in 6 standard hours," he announced, his voice carrying through the chamber with military precision. 300 capital ships, 5,000 support vessels, and enough firepower to crack a moon. "We will jump to the edge of their system, broadcast our intentions one final time, and if they still refuse to comply..." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "We will demonstrate that the Council's patience has limits." What Admiral Thexicor didn't know, what none of them knew, was that at that very moment, on a blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, humanity was having a very different conversation. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that didn't exist on any public record, Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood before a gathering of Earth's unified military command. The room hummed with barely contained energy, the kind that comes when decades of preparation finally meet their moment of truth. "They're coming," she said simply, and the room erupted into controlled chaos, not panic. Never panic. These were men and women who had spent their entire careers preparing for this exact scenario. They had wargamed it, simulated it, dreamed about it, and planned for it in excruciating detail. The only question had been when, not if. Intel confirms a massive fleet build-up in Vorshan space, continued General Marcus Webb, pulling up a holographic display that showed real-time data streaming in from humanity's network of stealth observation satellites. 300 capital ships, 5,000 support craft. Biggest show of force the Council's ever assembled. They're calling it Operation Enlightenment. A bitter laugh rippled through the room. Enlightenment, Admiral Chen repeated, her voice dripping with irony. They're going to enlighten us by forcing their way into our home. How generous. She turned to face her officers, and in her eyes burned something that had defined humanity since its earliest days. Not aggression, not hatred, but an absolute unshakable refusal to surrender. 70 years, she said quietly. 70 years since they arrived with their pretty words and their poisoned gifts. 70 years since they told us how the galaxy works, explained the rules we were expected to follow, and made it very clear that refusing wasn't an option. Her voice hardened. 70 years since we told them, politely but firmly, to go to hell. She pulled up another display, and this one showed Earth, but not the Earth the Galactic Council knew. This Earth was surrounded by thousands of defense platforms, yes, but that was just the visible layer. What the display showed now were the hidden layers, the secret projects, the weapons humanity had developed in absolute secrecy, using technology they'd been careful never to reveal. They think they know us, Admiral Chen continued. They've been watching us for 7 decades. They've monitored our communications, analyzed our technology, calculated our capabilities. They think they have us figured out. She smiled, and it was not a kind expression. They're wrong. Captain Yuki Tanaka of the Japanese Strategic Defense Force leaned forward. The question is, how wrong do we let them be? Full reveal or measured response? It was the question they'd been debating for years. Humanity had capabilities the Council had never seen, weapons that would shock even the oldest civilizations. But revealing everything would make Earth a threat, and threats eventually got eliminated. The key was to reveal just enough to make invasion too costly, while keeping enough in reserve to survive whatever came after. Measured, Admiral Chen decided. We show them the Iron Curtain, the Valkyrie network, and the Odin platforms. That should be enough to make them reconsider. We keep Prometheus in reserve. Around the room, officers nodded. The Prometheus project was humanity's ultimate insurance policy, a weapon so devastating that even discussing it in military briefings felt like tempting fate. If it came to using Prometheus, it meant everything else had failed. There's something else you should know, said Dr. Elizabeth Foster, Earth's chief xenopsychology advisor. We've been analyzing every interaction with the Council for 70 years. Every diplomatic exchange, every cultural briefing, every piece of intelligence we could gather. And we've identified a pattern. She pulled up a historical database, centuries of galactic conflicts flashing across the screen. The Council has integrated 43 species in the last millennium. Every single one followed the same pattern. Initial contact, diplomatic overture, reluctant acceptance, gradual integration, complete assimilation. Species that resisted were subjected to economic sanctions, then isolation, then military intervention. None of them lasted more than 50 years before surrendering, but we've lasted 70, General Webb observed. Exactly. We're the anomaly. And you know what's interesting? Dr. Foster zoomed in on a specific data point. Every species that resisted did so defensively. They built walls, they hunkered down, they tried to wait out the Council's patience. None of them ever fought back. Not really, Admiral Chen's eyes narrowed. You're saying they don't know how to deal with an actual threat? I'm saying they've never faced one. The Council has spent the last millennium absorbing civilizations that were too scared or too pacifist to resist effectively. They've never encountered a species that was willing to punch back. Dr. Foster's expression was grim. They're about to learn what happens when you corner a predator. What would you do if you were in Admiral Chen's position? Would you reveal all your weapons at once, hoping to shock them into retreat? Or would you hold back, calculating each move, keeping your true strength hidden until the moment you absolutely needed it? Humanity had spent 70 years preparing for this moment, but the decisions made in the next few hours would determine whether Earth remained free or became just another conquered world in the Council's endless empire. 6 hours later, at the edge of the Sol system, space tore itself apart. The jump was magnificent, A coordinated arrival of 300 capital ships emerging from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. For Admiral Thexicor, watching from the bridge of his flagship Eternal Glory, it was a moment of professional pride. 300 ships, each the size of a small city, appearing in the void with mathematical precision. It was a demonstration of power that had brought dozens of species to their knees. All ships report successful jump, his tactical officer announced. Formation holding. No signs of hostile activity. Thexicor studied the tactical display. They were positioned just beyond the orbit of Neptune, a good 2 light hours from Earth itself. Standard doctrine for a show-of-force operation. Give the enemy time to see what's coming. Let the fear build, allow cooler heads to prevail before actual violence became necessary. Broadcast our message, he ordered. Full spectrum, all known human frequencies. Make sure they can't miss it. The message was simple and had been carefully crafted by the Council's diplomatic corps, humans of Earth. This is Admiral Thexicor of the Galactic Council Fleet. For 70 standard years, you have isolated yourselves from the galactic community. For 70 years, you have refused the benefits of membership in a civilization spanning 47 worlds. This isolationism is unsustainable and contrary to the principles of galactic unity. We have come to ensure your integration, by force if necessary. You have 12 standard hours to deactivate your defensive network and accept Council representatives. Failure to comply will result in the systematic dismantling of your defenses and the occupation of your homeworld. This is your final opportunity to join the galaxy peacefully. Choose wisely. Thexicor sat back in his command chair, satisfied. 12 hours was generous. Most species surrendered within 6. Some took less than 1, as soon as they got a clear look at what they were facing. But as the minutes ticked by, something unexpected happened. Nothing. No panicked broadcasts. No desperate diplomatic overtures. No last-minute attempts at negotiation. The humans were silent. Tactical, are you certain they received the message? Thexicor asked. Confirmed, Admiral. Multiple human satellites acknowledged receipt. They heard us. Then why aren't they responding? It was General Crix who answered, his translator carrying a note of concern. Sir, I'm detecting massive power fluctuations throughout the human defense network. They're charging their weapons. Thexicor's mandibles clicked in confusion. All of them? That's a waste of energy. They can't possibly hope to engage 300 capital ships with orbital platforms. Not all the platforms, sir. Crix's voice had gone very quiet. All their weapons, every platform, every satellite, every installation on their moon. They're all powering up simultaneously. For the first time, Admiral Thexicor felt a cold touch of doubt. This wasn't the behavior of a species preparing to surrender. This was the behavior of a species preparing to fight. Get me a count, he demanded. How many weapon systems are we looking at? The tactical officer worked his console for several long moments, and when he looked up, his expression was troubled. Sir, we're detecting over 15,000 active weapon platforms. That's 3 times what our intelligence estimated. Impossible. We've been monitoring their construction for decades. Yes, sir, but these aren't all in orbit. Most of them are hidden in the asteroid belt, or on the dark side of their moon, or... The officer paused, checking his readings again. Sir, I'm detecting weapons platforms mixed in with their civilian satellites. They've been hiding them in plain sight. Before Thexicor could respond, his communications officer suddenly stiffened. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Audio only. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was female, calm and absolutely devoid of fear. Admiral Thexicor, this is Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your message. Our response is simple. No, you have entered the Sol system without permission. You have threatened our homeworld and our people. You have 12 standard hours to leave our space. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your fleet. We will not negotiate. We will not surrender. We will not be conquered. Leave now or face the consequences. This is your only warning. Silence filled the bridge. Not the thoughtful silence of commanders considering their options, but the shocked silence of beings who had just encountered something completely outside their experience. Admiral Thexicor had been a military officer for 6 decades. He had commanded fleets in 4 separate conflicts. He had negotiated the surrender of 2 entire civilizations, and never, not once, had any species responded to a council show of force with a direct threat of their own. Did she just... General Crix began. She did, Thexicor confirmed, his mind racing. She threatened us. Around the bridge, officers exchanged glances. Some looked offended, some looked confused, and just a few looked concerned. It's a bluff, Thexicor decided. It has to be. They're trying to project strength they don't have. Begin the advance. Battle formation. Move the fleet toward their inner system. Slowly. Let them see that their threats are meaningless. Sir, with respect, General Kree started. Execute the order. The fleet began to move. 300 ships advancing in perfect coordination. Their weapons ready but not yet charged. Standard intimidation protocol. Show overwhelming force. Make the enemy understand the futility of resistance. Give them one last chance to surrender. They made it exactly 40 million kilometers before everything went wrong. In the Defense Command Center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Chen watched the Council fleets advance with cold calculation. They're following textbook doctrine, General Webb observed. Slow advance. Weapons ready but not charged. Perfect formation. They're trying to scare us. Let them come a little closer, Admiral Chen said quietly. Wait until they cross the Neptune orbit line. Then we show them why you don't threaten Earth. Around the command center, dozens of officers monitored thousands of screens. Each one represented a different piece of humanity's defense network. Each one was ready to unleash violence on a scale the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. Crossing the line in 10 seconds, the tactical officer announced. 9, 8, 7. Admiral Chen took a deep breath. This was it. The moment 7 decades of preparation came down to. The moment humanity either proved itself worthy of independence or became another footnote in the Council's imperial history. 3, 2, 1. Mark. Execute Iron Curtain, Admiral Chen ordered, and the galaxy learned what happened when you threatened humanity's home. Admiral Thexicor's first indication that something was wrong came when his sensor officer screamed. Not a shout of alarm or a warning cry, but an actual scream of pure shock. Before Thexicor could reprimand him, he saw what had caused the reaction. Between the Council fleet and Earth, space itself seemed to ignite. Thousands of weapons platforms that had been dormant suddenly blazed to life, but these weren't the crude kinetic weapons or basic energy cannons the Council had expected. These were directed energy weapons of a sophistication that made the Vorshan Empire's most advanced technology look primitive by comparison. Focused gamma-ray lasers, particle beams that could melt through capital ship armor in seconds, electromagnetic pulse weapons that could fry every system on a ship from 1,000 kilometers away. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the volume of fire. The humans weren't taking carefully aimed shots or following any doctrine of measured response. They were unleashing everything all at once, in a display of overwhelming firepower that defied every tactical principle the Council had developed over millennia of warfare. Evasive maneuvers. Thexicor roared, but he was too late. The first wave of Council ships to enter the engagement zone simply ceased to exist. 37 capital ships, each carrying crews of 3,000, were reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma in less than 5 seconds. They didn't have time to raise shields to return fire to even understand what was happening. They were just gone. All ships full reverse, Thexicor commanded, his voice barely audible over the chaos erupting on his bridge. Get us out of their range. But the humans weren't done. As the Council fleet tried to retreat, a second wave of weapons activated. These weren't energy weapons, but kinetic systems, and they were unlike anything in the Council's arsenal. Railguns firing projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed, each round carrying enough kinetic energy to punch through multiple ships in a single shot. Missile swarms that moved with impossible agility, their guidance systems able to track and predict evasive maneuvers before the target ships even made them. They've been studying us, General Crix said, his voice hollow with shock. They've been watching how we fight, how we move, how we think. They built all of this specifically to counter our tactics. Thexicor said nothing. He was too busy watching his fleet die. In less than 3 minutes, the Council had lost 86 ships. Not damaged, lost, gone. Destroyed so completely that there wasn't enough left to recover bodies. Thousands of beings, civilians and military personnel, scientists and engineers, all erased from existence because they had believed the Council's propaganda about human primitiveness. "Sir, we need to withdraw," Crix urged. "We can't win this. Not like this. Withdraw?" Thexicor repeated, his translator struggling to convey the emotion in his voice. "Withdraw to where? Do you understand what this means? If we retreat, if we admit that a single species defeated the entire Council fleet, our authority over the galaxy is finished. Every conquered world, every reluctant member species will see this and realize they can resist. The Council will collapse within a generation. Better the Council collapses than all of us die here." Before Thexicor could respond, a new voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. It was Admiral Chen again, and this time she sounded almost sympathetic. "Admiral Thexicor, I imagine you're considering whether to retreat or press the attack. I want to make your decision easier. What you just experienced was the Iron Curtain, our close-range defensive network. Every weapon platform you saw, every system that just destroyed a third of your fleet, those are all automated. No humans were involved in that engagement. It was our computers versus your ships, and our computers won." She paused, letting that sink in. "Now I want you to consider something. If our automated defenses can do that much damage, what do you think our actual military fleet could do? You haven't seen a single human warship yet, Admiral. Not one. And if you continue your advance, you're going to find out why that should terrify you." Silence filled the bridge again. This time it was the silence of beings confronting their own imminent mortality. "She's bluffing," Thexicor said, but even he didn't believe it. "They don't have warships. Our intelligence would have detected them." "Sir," his sensor officer said quietly, "I'm detecting massive power signatures emerging from Earth orbit. Multiple contacts moving into engagement positions." He looked up, his four eyes wide with fear. "Sir, they're big. Really big." "I'm reading 24. No, 48, no." His voice trailed off as the numbers kept climbing. On the tactical display, new icons began appearing. Ships that dwarfed even the Council's capital vessels. 100 of them, emerging from hiding spots in the asteroid belt, from behind the moon, from stealth positions throughout the solar system. 243 contacts, the sensor officer finally reported. Each one massing at least twice our largest capital ship. "Sir, where did they hide all this? How did we not see them building this?" Dr. Foster would have smiled if she'd been there to hear the question. It was the right question, and the answer was quintessentially human. They hadn't built them in space. They'd built them underground, in massive caverns and abandoned mines, in secret facilities scattered across Earth and Mars and the Moon. They'd built them in pieces, in sections, in modules that looked like anything except warship components, and they'd assembled them in space only in the last 5 years, while the Council watched and assumed the humans had given up. "New message from Earth," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge again, but this time there was steel in it. "Admiral, you now have a choice. You can withdraw, return to the Council, and report that Earth is not interested in your enlightenment. Or you can press your attack, and I will be forced to demonstrate what the human warfleet can actually do. I don't want to kill thousands of your people, Admiral. Most of them are probably decent beings who are just following orders. But if you force my hand, I will eliminate your entire fleet without hesitation or mercy. You have 60 seconds to decide. Can you imagine being in Admiral Thexicor's position, watching your fleet, the pride of the Galactic Empire, being dismantled by weapons you didn't know existed, realizing that every assumption you'd made, every piece of intelligence you'd relied on, was carefully crafted misinformation, understanding that the species you'd come to conquer had been preparing for this exact moment for 7 decades, and they were ready in ways you couldn't possibly have anticipated. Thexicor looked around his bridge, at officers who had trained their entire lives for military command, at beings who had believed the Council was invincible because it had never truly been challenged. He looked at the tactical display showing the remains of his fleet, 86 ships gone, and hundreds of human warships positioning themselves for a killing blow. He thought about the thousands of beings under his command, people with families and futures and hopes that didn't include dying in a system the Council had considered a minor annoyance, and he made the hardest decision of his military career. "Order the fleet to withdraw," he said quietly. "Full retreat. Get us out of this system." Relief flooded through the bridge, but General Crix had one more question. "Sir, what do we tell the Council?" Thexicor looked at the tactical display one more time, at the human warships that were even now powering down their weapons, having made their point without needing to fire a single shot. "We tell them the truth," he said. "We tell them we encountered a peer military power. We tell them the humans aren't primitives hiding behind walls. They're predators who have been waiting for us to bare our teeth so they could show us theirs." He paused, something almost like respect creeping into his voice. "And we tell them that if the Council wants Earth, they'll have to send 10 times the ships we brought. Maybe 100 times, and even that might not be enough." 24 hours after the Council fleet limped out of the Sol system, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the same command center where she'd orchestrated humanity's defense. Around her, officers were celebrating, congratulating each other, toasting their victory. They had earned it. They had defended Earth against impossible odds and won without losing a single ship. But Admiral Chen wasn't celebrating. She was thinking about what came next. "They'll be back," General Webb said quietly, appearing beside her. "Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year. But eventually the Council will decide that Earth represents too much of a threat to leave alone." "I know," Chen replied. "And when they come, they won't make the same mistakes. They'll bring enough firepower to overwhelm our defenses. They'll strike fast and hard and without warning." She turned to face Webb, her expression grim. "Which is why we can't wait for them to come to us." Webb's eyebrows rose. "You're suggesting—" "I'm suggesting that for 70 years we've been playing defense. We've been hiding, building, preparing. And it worked. We bloodied their nose, sent them running. But defense isn't enough. Not anymore." Chen pulled up a star map, showing the Council's territory, dozens of worlds spanning hundreds of light years. "They conquered 43 species, General. 43 civilizations that either surrendered or were destroyed. What if some of them are still out there, still waiting for a chance to be free? What if what they needed wasn't protection, but an example?" "You want to start a revolution?" Webb said slowly. "I want to finish what we started," Chen corrected. "We proved Earth can't be conquered. Now we need to prove that the Council's empire can't last. We need to show every species they've subjugated that resistance is possible. That freedom is worth fighting for." She looked back at the star map, at all those conquered worlds, and in her mind she could see it. Not immediately, not easily, but inevitably. The Council's empire starting to fracture, species rising up. The galaxy, slowly but surely, learning the lesson that humanity had been trying to teach for 70 years. Some things are worth fighting for. Some principles are worth defending. And sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to demonstrate that you're too dangerous to attack. "Get me Admiral Zhang, General Morrison, and Secretary General Okonkwo," Chen ordered. "If we're going to do this, we're going to do it properly. The Council wanted to enlighten us. Let's show them what real enlightenment looks like." 500 light-years away, in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, 47 representatives listened in shocked silence as Admiral Thexicor delivered his report. He told them everything: the hidden weapons, the overwhelming firepower, the human war fleet that appeared from nowhere. He told them about the 86 ships lost, the thousands of beings killed, and the brutal efficiency with which humanity had defended their world. When he finished, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Council member Zathria, the same being who had dismissed humanity as primitive 70 years ago, spoke. "This is unprecedented. In 1,000 years of expansion, the Council has never encountered meaningful resistance." "What do you recommend, Admiral?" Thexicor took a deep breath. "I recommend we leave them alone. We declare Sol System off limits and focus our attention elsewhere. The humans have made it clear they want isolation. Let them have it." "Unacceptable," growled Representative Kroll of the Mantarian hegemony. "If we allow this insult to stand, every species in the Council will question our authority. We must respond with overwhelming force." "And lose how many more ships?" Thexicor shot back. "How many more lives? I'm telling you, the humans have been preparing for war since the day we made contact. Everything they showed us was carefully calculated to make us underestimate them. They're not primitives and they're not weak. They're dangerous." The debate raged for hours, with some Council members calling for immediate retaliation and others urging caution. But in the end, it was Zathria who proposed the solution that would define the galaxy's relationship with humanity for generations to come. "We do nothing," she said. "We declare Sol System a restricted zone and we wait. Let the humans have their isolation. Let them stay in their fortress, but we watch them carefully. We monitor every signal from their space, and if they ever try to expand beyond their system, if they ever pose a threat to Council space, then we strike with everything we have. It was agreed upon. The Council would leave Earth alone for now, but they would never forget what had happened at the Battle of Sol. They would never forget that somewhere in the galaxy, there was a species that had said no to the Council and made it stick. And in the decades that followed, as humanity began cautiously exploring the stars, as they made contact with other species and formed alliances outside the Council's control, as they became a beacon for independence and self-determination, the Council would have reason to regret their decision to wake the sleeping predator, because humanity had learned something important that day. They had learned that the galaxy respected strength, that the only way to preserve freedom was to demonstrate that conquering them would cost more than any victory was worth. And most importantly, they had learned that they weren't alone. Somewhere in the Council's vast empire, there were other species watching, waiting, hoping that if humans could stand against the Council, maybe they could too. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the UES Freedom, humanity's newest and most advanced warship, and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council was regrouping, recalculating, planning their next move. And somewhere out there were species that had given up their freedom, their independence, their right to determine their own destiny. Beautiful, isn't it? General Webb said, joining her at the viewport. All those stars, all those possibilities, all those people, Chen corrected. People who deserve the same choice we fought for. The same freedom. Are we really going to do this? Take on the entire Council? Chen smiled, and it was the fierce, determined smile of someone who had stared down an empire and won. We already did, Marcus. We already did. What comes next is just finishing the job. Behind them, the Freedom's engines hummed to life, preparing for humanity's first official journey beyond the Sol system. Not as supplicants seeking approval, not as a conquered species begging for mercy, but as equals, as a free people, as the species that had looked at the galaxy's most powerful empire and said one simple word: no. And in that refusal, in that absolute unwillingness to surrender their independence, humanity had changed the galaxy forever. They had proven that the Council's expansion wasn't inevitable, that their authority wasn't absolute, that somewhere in the universe there were still beings willing to fight for freedom no matter the cost. The Battle of Sol would be remembered for centuries as the day the galactic order began to crumble. The day one species' stubborn refusal to be conquered became a rallying cry for 100 oppressed civilizations. The day humanity stopped being Earth's children and became the galaxy's conscience, because that's what humans do. We draw lines, we stand our ground, we look at impossible odds and say, not today. We turn our homes into fortresses and dare the universe to try taking them from us. And when bullies come knocking expecting surrender, we show them exactly why predators evolved intelligence in the first place. Not to conquer, not to destroy, but to protect, to defend, to stand between those we love and anything that threatens them. The galaxy thought it could breach Earth's borders. They were wrong. But more than that, they failed to understand what would happen once they tried. They awakened something in humanity, something that had been dormant during our 70 years of preparation. They reminded us why we built those weapons, why we trained those soldiers, why we spent decades preparing for a war we hoped would never come. They reminded us what we were protecting. Not just a planet, not just our species, but an idea. The idea that freedom matters, that independence has value, that the right to choose your own path is worth fighting for, dying for, killing for if necessary. And now, as humanity prepared to venture into the galaxy, they carried that idea with them. A virus of freedom that would spread to every world they touched. A promise that the Council's empire had an expiration date. The galaxy had tried to breach Earth's borders and failed. Now Earth was going to breach the galaxy's borders, and the Council would learn what humanity had been trying to tell them for 70 years. We don't want to conquer you. We don't want to destroy you. We just want to be left alone. But if you won't let us live in peace, then we'll make sure nobody can live in tyranny. That's the human way. That's what makes us special, dangerous, and worthy of respect. That's why you should never ever mistake our patience for weakness. Because when we finally stop being patient, when we finally show you what we're really capable of, it's already too late. The galaxy learned that lesson at Sol. 86 ships and thousands of lives learned it the hardest way possible. And in the years to come, the Council would have many opportunities to remember that lesson, because Earth's borders had held. And now humanity was ready to show the galaxy what happened next. What would you do if you were given the choice between safety and freedom? Would you surrender to overwhelming force? Or would you fight for the right to determine your own destiny? Humanity chose to fight, and that choice changed everything. If you enjoyed this story of human determination and the defense of Earth, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what part of the Battle of Seoul got your heart racing. Was it the reveal of the hidden fleet, the destruction of the Council's ships, or Admiral Chen's promise that humanity was just getting started? Subscribe for more HFY stories where humanity proves we're the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we absolutely refuse to quit. New stories every week exploring what makes humanity special in a universe that constantly underestimates us. And here's a question for you. What should humanity do next? Should they help other species fight for freedom, or should they focus on defending their own borders? Let me know in the comments. Your ideas might inspire the next story. Remember, the galaxy thought it could breach Earth's borders. They were wrong. And they're about to learn that was the least of their mistakes. Until next time, stay human, stay defiant, and never forget what we're capable of when someone threatens our home.